Good morning and good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate you making some time, and hopefully we've got some content today that will inspire you in relation to your marketing automation with Eloqua. All right, let's get started. I'll turn my video on. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today, and I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing at Marketing Cube. Our CEO, Adrian Jones, and one of our account directors, Sean, should also be joining us as well. So if you do have any questions, please keep the team busy and drop those straight into the chat area. So we use Zoom to host and record our webinars, and replays are posted on our blog, so you can access them there, usually within a week or two following the live session. You can ask questions throughout. We look forward to that. There will be Q&A at the end of the webinar. At the same time, please feel free to use the Q&A throughout the course of the webinar, and we'll be happy to respond to those as soon as we can. Just keep in mind the Q&A is public. That's the only thing. So the idea is if somebody else asks a question that you might also want, you can go ahead and upload that as well. If you wanted to talk to us privately, you can use the chat function to do that. So let's dive in and have a look at the agenda for today's session. First one is questions answered. So we do get a few questions that get submitted from time to time as people register, and we certainly invite you next month to, if you've got any specific questions, please feel free to submit those questions next month as well, and we'll get those answered for you. But today is all about engagement, and so we'll be focusing on basic engagement with the campaign canvas, understanding some of the basics and fundamentals that are applicable there. Then we're going to look at the campaign routing in two specific types of campaigns. We'll be looking at an event and also a lead nurture campaign, and looking at how we can potentially modify that journey just a little bit based on the data that we have, and potentially also on digital body language. And another important part of that whole exercise is excluding people. And you might have a range of reasons as to why you need to exclude people. And it's not just excluding them necessarily from the outset, but potentially halfway through a campaign. Perhaps the message just isn't resonating, and so maybe another channel is a better way to reach somebody. So we'll look at ways you can manage that as well. We have a few more details around the Eloqua release as well, the most recent release from February, and then of course Q&A. But as I said, please feel free to use the Q&A function throughout the course of the day, or the course of the webinar, I should say. All right. So we had two questions submitted, and actually by the same person, and both from the Australian audience, which the webinar we ran yesterday. I kept these in because actually I thought they were pretty good questions, and I figured there might be somebody who might be interested in our US and European clients. So let's have a look. So this is from Kath. Kath is with a law firm in Australia and manages their Eloqua instance here. So she's looking to personalize content and asking if it's possible to add merge fields to dynamic content. So the answer is yes. For that first one, absolutely. You can drop field merges into your dynamic content. That's not a problem. So the dynamic content appears in an email or on a landing page if you attended a session. So these sessions that Kath is referring to are what they call within the Australian market CLE, which is continuous learning education, I think it is, CLE. Mostly for professional services, lawyers, accountants. In order to maintain their accreditations, they need to participate in authenticated or approved learning courses. And so many accounting firms and law firms offer these. I imagine there's something similar with the US and European markets as well. They drop that information and who attends onto a custom object. So every time a person attends, there's a new entry in a custom object of person Jamie at xyzlawfirm.com, and the date of the course ID, quite probably, name of the course, etc., duration, and so on and so forth, and a number of points that can be applied in that process. So the question drills down into making sure that they get the right information into the right field merge. And so fundamentally, the way that works is when you create a field merge, you've got the ability to target which particular field merge you're wanting, especially on a custom object. So you can run with most recently modified, which is probably a good way to go. That's going to give you the most current and most recent piece of information that you could merge into an email. If you wanted to be more specific, then you need to look at some sort of a unique identifier. And in this case, the session ID is the best one to use, or event ID, they call it, sorry. Event ID. That will enable you to drill down to a specific entry within a particular custom object and merge data from that particular record into the email. So absolutely, yes, this can be achieved. It just probably requires a little bit more information from Kath to be specific, but fundamentally those capabilities with field mergers can be very specific down to an individual entry. In this case, they're using an event ID to identify that, or you could use the most recently modified option to do that. Now, the next question that was submitted by Kath related to the dynamic content and shared content areas of Eloqua. Now, if you've been using Eloqua for some time, you'll be familiar with the fact that the current email design editor, beautiful drag and drop, responsive output, so on and so forth, without any HTML. Once we move back to the dynamic content and shared content editors, though, that creation experience is a little different. It hasn't been updated. It's not the same as the email design editor. So is there a workaround? What can we do? So one of the questions that she asked here was, if Oracle has any plans. So I reached out to the product marketing team at Oracle to seek some confirmation on this. And the response was triple checked, close quote, triple checked. And the answer is no. Okay, so initially I was like, hang on a minute. Okay, so I think what that means is that with the next release of Eloqua, we don't know when that is. We know there's certainly an update happening in May this year, but it looks like this request isn't going to form part of that process. But I think what we're going to see is a change in the way that we create content within Eloqua. So today we have this very structured view of creating an email over here, creating dynamic content and shared content in separate areas. I think what we're going to see moving forward is a merging of the ability to create those pieces of content in a single location. And it would kind of make sense, whether that be the email design editor or maybe it gets a refresh, etc. So my feeling is that while the answer, strictly speaking, is no, that the dynamic content and shared content editors aren't going to be upgraded, the reason for that is that there will, in fact, be a new way that we will, in fact, create dynamic content and shared content. So I just wanted to reinforce to Kath that no is the answer. However, I think we can expect something a little different. Now, what do we do in the meantime? Well, there is, in fact, a workaround that we can play with. And that is using the email design editor as our content creator. So what do I mean by that? So at the moment, you'll go into an email and you'll create an email with the full intent of what you create to, in fact, be an email. However, if we take a step back and look at the email design editor, perhaps just simply as a design editor that enables us to create content. That content may be an email, or that content may be snippets of content that we want to drop into dynamic content or potentially into shared content. So in the example that you can see on the screen here, the user group is a great example. We reach out to a global audience. We run 2 webinars each month, this one for the US or North American and European market. And we do another one on the day before, which is for the Asia Pac region. So that means I don't want to necessarily give everybody all of the dates and times. It just gets very complicated. So based on where you are in the world, so your country, we're able to then be a little bit more specific with the information that we give you. And so we use dynamic content in order to do that. So on screen, what you can see there is a section or a snippet from the email invitation that you may have received. And so this one is specifically looking at the Americas and EMEA scenario. So all I've done is create that in the email. You'll see there is no header, there is no footer, there's really nothing else. It's just simply the calendar icons. That's it, because that's all I need to put into my dynamic content. So from the email design editor, I go to the actions menu and I click on copy to clipboard or export HTML from the actions menu, and then click on copy to clipboard. Now I've got that copied on my clipboard. The next step is to go over to my dynamic content. And from dynamic content, whoops, sorry, let me go back there. You go back to the dynamic content, and from within there, you have that option to click on full, which you might be aware of. That's where you will access images, etc. Once you access the full area, then you'll see the SRC button or the source button, and that pops open. That's where you paste the HTML. And then Shazam, you've got what's sitting in front of you. It's responsive, it's perfect every time, and it fits directly into your email and will blend in and be on brand and perfect every time. So that's just a nice, quick and easy workaround. It's really is a workaround. It's not ideal, but it's certainly a much better solution than trying to manage with the old editor in place of using the designed editor. So hopefully that's a helpful tip that might save you a little bit of time. All right, let's jump in now to the main topic for today, which is looking first of all at basic engagement, routing on the campaign or routing with the campaign canvas. The key point I really want to try and get across here is that we can play with technology for technology's sake, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the decisions we're making for the campaign canvas are based on, or at least strategy-led, that our strategy is guiding the processes and the direction of the choices that we're making. Now, over time, you're going to slowly gather profile data from people, and you'll do that in a whole range of different ways. It might be through CRM inputs from the sales team and the service team. It may be through various campaigns where you invite people to fill in forms. And from those form submissions, they can then obviously add more detail and information. Several campaign canvas elements will allow you to ask a yes or no question. And this is really where we start to be able to alternate and choose the direction that people go in a campaign. So we need to think about how they move forward in the campaign. And I'll show you here in just a moment some of those elements of the campaign canvas, and we'll dig into those a little bit deeper. If, however, how you move that person and which content you present them with should be driven by your campaign objective, obviously, right? Let's just not do things for the sake of doing it. Let's make sure that the content we're delivering is relevant and fits the purpose and strategy behind our particular campaign objective. All right, so what are some basic examples of why we might route people differently on a campaign? So an event registration, that one's kind of easy, right? The key thing there is, have they actually registered, yes or no? So we want to know how to do that, and I'll show you how to do that. You may route people differently based on industry. So as you start to move through a campaign, if you think of a lead nurture campaign, maybe in the very early stages, you're capturing information you don't know industry, but it would be important for you to know that moving forward. And so we try and incentivize people to share that with us. So as you can move through the campaign, once you capture industry, then we can focus on that a bit further. We've got some examples here shortly I'll show you. Primary area of interest is another really good one. Once we know what the person's actual interest is, and certainly their primary interest, that would enable us to then obviously tailor our communications a little bit more effectively. Geographical confirmation. If your business is primarily within North America and you're able to identify that somebody is from the Philippines or potentially Australia or Germany, that's great, but it's not really the market you're playing in. So what do we do with those particular individuals and those leads? Do we put them through a route? Do we put them through a lead nurture campaign? Do we pass them on to or encourage them to contact business partners in other parts of the world? That can be helpful. Job category. Sometimes job category can be really good, especially if you're looking at a buying cycle and trying to pinpoint where that person's up to. Understanding where the job category fits. Are they a C-level, vice president, director, manager, individual contributor? Where are they in that spectrum? That could be another reason that you might want to route people differently. If you think about it from a university or higher education point of view, study preferences is critical in how you might route people. You don't want to be putting engineering information in front of an arts student, for instance, or a prospective arts student. You want to make sure that you're presenting information that's relevant. But of course, we have to ask the questions first so that we can be sure that we know what we're presenting is on message. Today's date and system date. Now, the reason I add those is they're two slightly different things, and Eloqua gives you two slightly different elements to manage them. The concept of today's date is very much the construct of the campaign canvas in the moment. If you've got a campaign running that will have people coming into the campaign on a regular basis, maybe every hour or once a day, for example, we need to think about what the messaging is going to look like. And if you think about it, the lead up to an event, maybe you start your comms 6 weeks before, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 weeks, etc., leading up to. If you wanted to be really overt in those emails and say, for example, we're 4 weeks away from our next major event in New York City, obviously that email can only be sent within a specific date range. And so using today's date function enables you to do that. We'll show you how to do that here in a moment. System date, though, that is different. What I refer to when I talk about a system date, it could be a date that is associated to an individual or to maybe an account that that individual is associated with. Let me give you an example. Maybe you're managing subscriptions of some sort. So a subscription could be a subscription expiry date. That's a fixed date that sits in the system. And we want to understand, are we 20 days or 2 months or 3 months before that date or after that date, for example? It could be a purchase date. It could be a whole range of different types of dates. For the user group, for example, when someone initially subscribes to the user group, on that day, we actually stamp their contact with a field called, I think it's called user group join date, very original. So user group join date. And so that date is fixed. It never changes. And we use that in a whole range of different ways in how we communicate with different members of the user group or subscribers to the user group. So they're just some examples of how you may choose to alter the direction somebody follows in a campaign. Now, all of these processes maybe can be a little bit overwhelming, but there's lots of options available. And I obviously want to make you aware that Marketing Cube provides consulting and strategic services around these sorts of things. So if this is something that is ticking over in your mind and you're trying to find somebody who might be able to help you and actually understand marketing automation, and very specifically Eloqua marketing automation and certainly integration with multiple CRM platforms, then we would love to hear from you. So please feel free to contact us. You can reach us on our website through our contacts form, or you can scan that with your phone right now and shoot us a message. So we'd love to hear from you. All right, so multi-step campaign canvases. So what I wanted to do here is actually dive in now and actually have a look at some of the functions of these various elements that will do the things that I just pointed out. So first one, and probably the most common one, is the compare contact fields. So this one basically enables you to access any of the fields that you have on your Eloqua contact. So just to be really clear, if I go back to a contact within the system, so here's Derek. Actually, no, it's not me. Sorry, this one's me. And look at the field details. So all of these fields that you can see, now this is obviously going to be different for everybody. Everybody's instance of Eloqua is going to be a little bit different. But all of these fields are available to you right here. Exactly the same list, okay? So we talked a little bit earlier, I suggested that, maybe industry was something that you wanted to look at and potentially route somebody in a little bit differently. Let's choose mining, for example. So in this case, you might have people coming into the step. At this point, we're asking, is the person in the mining industry? Does their contact field say mining? Yes, it does. Well, they'll go off in this direction. If not, then they'll head in this direction. Easily configured, as you can see. The other one is compare custom object fields. So this really is identical to the first one, except instead of referencing the contact, we're now referencing the custom object. So if you use custom objects quite a bit in your organization, you'll know that you probably have a list similar to ours with a whole range of different sort of things happening in there. And so once you select the actual custom object, then you drill down to the next level, which is looking at the actual field itself, and like so. And so then you've got a range of pieces of or operators you can play with there to pick out exactly what it is you're looking for. Okay. Then shared filter member. So the shared filter member is one that we use quite a bit. Many of the shared filters that I use in my campaigns are kind of reusable. I create them and then I potentially use them on multiple campaigns, asking same questions, but just wanting to repeat the process in different campaigns. Of course, you can create them off the bat if they need to be completely unique to your specific campaign, but adding shared filters can be really quite helpful. The other way I like to think about shared filters is I sometimes refer to it as segmentation on the fly. So when you create a segment, you have a whole range of filters available to you. In the shared filter environment, you have exactly the same list of filters to play with. And so while the segment is used to create your initial audience for your campaign to first go live, what a shared filter enables you to do is potentially ask those same questions further on, or slightly different questions later on, or maybe more specific questions later on as people are progressing through a particular campaign. So shared filters are really helpful. One common use case for those is often similar to this. So this one here, visited website, is a very generic question. It's not asking which page on the website. It's simply asking, did they visit your website? Now, in the very early stages of a nurturing campaign, for example, that's a great element to use because all you're trying to do typically those early stages is get a gauge for engagement and understand if people are actually clicking and maybe going to the website. Okay, great. They're engaged. That's good. However, as you progress further into the lead nurture campaign, it's probable that you will want to start to be a little bit more specific in relation to the questions you're asking. So not just did they simply visit the website, but did they visit the website and look at any of these 6 pages that talk all about product XYZ? So that's where a shared filter can come in really handy, because the shared filter enables you to then put in those very specific URLs. So not just the website, but specifically these 6 pages on the website by URL. So that's where a shared filter can help you narrow down the question and be a little bit more specific than just simply did they visit the website. Now, here are the 2 date options that I talked about. So compare date and date decision. So compare date enables you to ask a range of questions around dates: on, before, after, between, so on and so forth. So for example, we talked about the idea of an event and an invitation that goes out 4 weeks beforehand. And in that email, we use very specific language that says we're 4 weeks away now from our event. Please make sure you register. Don't miss this great opportunity. Those sorts of things. Or what we can do here is actually nominate a period that is in fact 1 single week. So there we go. We've got a week sitting there, and you nominate a time if you want to, and your time frame or your time zone should default to wherever your user profile is based. Okay. So mine defaults to Sydney, Australia, because that's where I am. But in your world, it should default to wherever you are. If it doesn't default to your location, by the way, have a chat to your administrator. It just means they haven't set that time on your user profile. Only takes a second to fix and saves you having to change it every single time. So that's what compare date does. Now, date decision, though, is a little bit different. So date decision relates to a date that rests on the Eloqua contact. So if we have a date field, like I said, it could be contract expiry date, it could be like a subscription date for a certain subscription, whatever it may be, you're able to select it like so. And the list of dates that you get here on the Eloqua contact, it's only showing you fields that are in fact date fields. So if you look at this list and you don't see a field that you believe is a date field, it just means that that field has been incorrectly configured. It's probably just a text field that has had a date added to it. Okay. The field must be a date field in order for this to work. And so your administrator will be able to figure that out for you and potentially rectify that for you. Then you've got various operators you can play with. So greater than, equal to, less than, etc. Defaults to current date. You can play around with that. There's a whole range of ways you can do plus and minus, number of days, etc. from that. So if you're wanting to, if you have an expiry date, for example, of a contract, and you want to make sure that email comms go out to somebody no later than 2 weeks or 14 days before that date, then you can use the date comparison tool here to help you get that particular outcome. So that's another one to play with. Now, shared list member. Shared list member is probably one of the most common ones that we certainly use, and it certainly gets used a great deal in the context of events. So what you're able to do there is create your shared list and potentially call it all registrants and drop it into your form processing steps. So once that form is submitted, the processing steps will kick in. All registrants will be dropped into your relevant shared list. And so that's the shared list that we could then refer to on the campaign canvas that's sending out all the emails. And that's how we can guarantee we don't send an invitation to somebody to register if in fact they've already registered. Okay, we don't want to do that. We look like fools inviting somebody who's already told us they're coming. Okay, so unless they're using a different email address, that's a different story. But yeah, as long as that unique individual, we have their details and they're in that shared list, that way we can guarantee they won't get invited again to the same event. Obviously ideal. Now, a question that often comes up when I suggest that is, well, why wouldn't I use submitted form? Look, and that's a fair enough question because it seems pretty logical that you would use the submitted form question. Okay, but you've got to understand what the submitted form question is actually asking. So when we ask the question on the campaign canvas, has the person submitted a form? We're only talking about campaign members. So by that, as any segment like so, anybody that's sitting in this segment that works their way through the campaign is a campaign member. And when we get to this step and we ask the question, have they submitted the form? What we're actually asking is, has the campaign member submitted the form? Now, so far, you're probably thinking, well, yeah, that sounds like what I need. Okay, so what we have to factor in, or what I would encourage you to factor in, is unfortunately human behavior. And there's no accounting for human behavior, but we can try our best. So let me give you an example. What you can sometimes end up with is a scenario where I receive an invitation from your organization to attend your event. I'm on your database, I'm in that segment, you know who I am, and you sent me an invitation. I get that invitation. I'm like, this looks like a really good event. I'm going to ask if my colleague wants to join me. So I go over and have a chat to my colleague and I forward them the particular email and suggest they also register. Now they'll click on that email. They'll reach your registration page. Now they're pretty cluey, but what they'll probably experience is the fact that the form will pre-populate with my details. They know who they are. That's fine. They'll type over that information, put in their own information, etc., and go ahead and submit that particular form. That doesn't make them a campaign member. Okay, all they've done is submit the form. Now they are in the shared list though, because that's the thing we're encouraging you to do from an event point of view, is add them to a shared list. The other processing step you want to have on your event forms is adding them to the campaign. For those people who are already in the campaign, that's fine. They just get added back in again. It makes perfect sense. That's fine. But for those people like the scenario that I just advised, so my colleague, it means that my colleague will now also be a campaign member and is added to the process and will move through and then also receive their reminder emails to attend, which I'm sure would typically form part of your event campaign. A whole range of moving parts there. I template all of this so I don't have to think about it, by the way. So every month when we do the user group, everything is literally templated to within an inch of its life. Let me show you quickly what that looks like. Here's our 2023 campaigns. Let me show you invitations for February. So we've got basically the Asia Pac audience. We have some Oracle staff not within the Americas. We have our internal team here at Marketing Cube. And then over here, I have a similar list for the Americas and EMEA. So similar experience. So here you'll see things like using the date comparison step. So we're asking, is it on or before the day of the user group? Because we have new people coming into the campaign once a day. We have that refresh. So Somebody may register literally the day before or even hours before the live webinar. And so we sort of have a cutoff point where they get their confirmation email for subscribing. That's great. But I'm just not sure inviting somebody to attend a webinar sort of with less than 24 hours notice is probably the most ideal outcome. So we can use the compared date step in some cases to exit. And so you can see there I'm using that as, too late to send the invitation. So that's fine. They'll pick it up next month. No dramas there at all. And everyone flows through, but all of this is templated. So the whole process is templated, as I said, within an inch of its life. And here you can see where we're using a shared list as well. So we have a few shared lists for the user group because we have 2 live webinars that we're running, plus we're seeking people who want SMS reminders. So that's becomes part of the exercise as well. And then there's also the all registered group as well. So at this early stage here, I'm not really interested in which webinar people have registered for. It's just simply have they registered, period. So I, in fact, have 3 shared lists. One is all registrants. Then I have one that is just Asia Pac, and the other is just the Americas and EMEA. So all put together. Events we'll cover later in the year. There's plenty of replays on our blog if events is something that you're buried in at the moment. I know as we're sort of starting to spend more face-to-face time together, that events are sort of coming to the top of the list for a lot of people. Okay, so they're kind of the key elements on the canvas that I wanted to point out. There are loads, as you know, but they're just the ones that we wanted to focus on for today. So let's move on to our next section, which is campaign routing, working with a specific campaign, for example, your lead nurturing campaign. And this is really a good example of how we can adjust the journey for people based on the information that we know or what we don't know, just as important. Now, it would be remiss of me. I wanted to share this one with you because we spent a lot of time with this client last year, Flight Centre Travel Group. And some of you may be familiar with the Flight Centre Travel Group. They're an Australian company, but a global brand providing corporate travel and retail travel as well for the average mum and dad looking to go on holidays. So you can talk to Flight Centre, but you may also use them from a corporate travel point of view as well. We spent quite a bit of time working with them across 4 different countries. And this was just some really nice feedback that we got from the Flight Centre Travel Group. We were particularly excited, and the other key reason we want to share this with you is that we managed to nominate, and the Flight Centre Travel Group won a Marquee Award last year for the particular campaign, which was around persona and lead nurture. So we spent quite a bit of time helping them work out personas, working out who they're talking to, which they knew, obviously, but nutting it down to some personas, which really helped from a content development point of view. And then that fell into the building and designing of a lead nurture campaign, spread across their multiple geographies and tailored for those individual regions. So super excited to share that with you. We'll have some more information available for that, and I'll try and get some information to you perhaps in the follow-up emails for this month as well. So you can explore that in a little bit more detail if you wanted to. All right, so campaign routing. Key thing here is going to be your first-party data. And certainly within the Asia-Pac markets and certainly within the EMEA environment, specifically the EU, I should say, things like GDPR, etc., mean that we need to be a lot smarter about the first-party data that we're collecting. And our ability to use that data potentially through advertising is going to start to be a little bit more limited. The US market in some cases is proving a little bit tough there as well. Privacy is important. We all want privacy, but as marketers, we're maybe torn between the two a little bit. We want to use that first-party data, not for nefarious purposes, obviously, but we just simply want to tailor those experiences so that our message resonates with people and makes sense when it reaches their inbox. And so first-party data and the gathering of that first-party data should be certainly a key objective of yours as you move throughout the year. So we can use that data to really tailor and adjust the experience that we deliver to people. Depending on how you capture that first-party data and where you put it, you may add it to the contact or you may add it to a custom object. It may vary as to where you put it, but that's fine. We can access it wherever it is within reason. We can access it from those 2 locations. an example to help us with this process. The example I want to give you is, let's look at the mining industry. I said choose an industry, so I thought I'll run with mining. And we know that that person has in fact looked at 3 pages on your website that relate to the mining industry. So that's good news. So let's jump in and have a closer look. So I want 2 examples to look at. First one is event registrations, and looking to see if people have in fact registered, or if they've RSVP'd, or if they've actually attended the event. Then we'll look at a lead nurture campaign, and we want to understand if the person is in fact in the primary or target industry. And for our example here, that target industry for you is people within the mining industry. You may then also have a second tier group of industries. That may be another 5 or so industries. So mining is your number 1. Number 2 tier is 5 different industries. And then there's everybody else. Okay. So let's jump in and have a look. Okay. So this one is really quite simple in relation to the execution and understanding of it. You'll have your initial segment, which will be your list of 300, 400, 500 people, or maybe it's 10,000 people that you want to invite to an event. And this event could be face-to-face. It could be a conference face-to-face. It could be a webinar. It could be a range of different things. Invitations go out. We then wait for a period of time, maybe a week or so. And now the first thing we want to do before we go out with a second invitation is to validate, did people in fact register? So as long as we've used the form processing steps to push all registrants into a shared list, we can then reference that exact same shared list here from the campaign canvas. And so that shared list becomes your source of truth. The nice thing about the shared list over looking just at the form submission data is that the shared list is unique. Whereas a form submission, if Johnny fills in the form 5 times, you will in fact see 5 different submissions of that form. Okay, hence it's called form submission data. The nice thing about the shared list is it's unique. So while Johnny may have registered 5 times for a range of different reasons, with poor Johnny, that doesn't matter. He'll only appear once within the shared list. So that makes it easier, especially when you're managing numbers and catering and all those sorts of fun things. So that's our source of truth. And quite simply, it's a yes/no response, as you can see there. If it's a yes, they have registered. Potentially we move them from this campaign now to a separate one, or maybe they sort of go down to reminder emails to attend, and so on and so forth. However, if they have not registered and they're not in that shared list, we can then in confidence send a second invitation to those people who have not registered. Now, I have, unfortunately, over the years, seen some Eloqua users do this campaign by campaign by campaign. So they literally will have a single segment with a single email, and that's it. That's one canvas. Then they'll create a second canvas, and they have to create a new segment, which is taking out people who have submitted the form. It just gets really complicated, unnecessarily complicated. And then they'll have a second canvas to send out their second invitation. Craziness, okay? It's just a waste of time and really not necessary. Let's use the automation in our marketing automation to do exactly that and to deliver a much better experience and a more timely experience, and one that saves you time as well. All right, let's jump down and have a look at the leads to be nurtured campaign. So what we've got here, now there could be a whole range of ways that people get into your nurture campaign. Maybe it's through the CRM, for example. Maybe it's through form submissions on the website, through different forms. Depending on the inquiry, you may direct people then into your nurture campaign. So that's fine. They make their way in and off they go. The first email is sent out the door. And in this particular instance, we have a call to action in that particular email to download the XYZ white paper. That's the purpose. Okay. So email goes out the door. We wait for a period of time. Now, one of the key things that we wanted to understand from that white paper download, we have a question in our scenario. There's a question on that form that asks for their industry. It's a required field. Hopefully what we're capturing is people who are in mining. If people have now answered that form and told us that they're actually in the mining sector, like so it would be configured like this. It does the Does the industry equal mining? Is it exactly mining? Okay, great. If it is, now we can start to route those people off in a slightly different direction. And so maybe we now take a very specific view of the world that is around mining. Okay. Now, depending on how your campaign canvases are laid out, you may even want to move them to a separate canvas now, which is part of your lead nurture campaign, but it's a completely standalone campaign that purely focuses on mining. Now, of course, you could use things like dynamic content, etc. Yes, you could. Absolutely. Absolutely, you could. The benefit maybe of doing something like this is that you now have a very highly tailored campaign that is really just for that particular industry. Now, it's all going to depend on the value of what the information is to your business and justifying the time and so on and so forth. But the key thing we're looking at here is helping you to adjust the individual's journey based on the information that you have available. Now, if they're not in the mining sector, what we may do is send them off now down to the second email, where maybe our call to action now is to provide their preferences. So that email will have a link that takes them off to the preference center where they can tell you what they're actually interested in. And hidden amongst those various questions is, again, potentially asking them which industry they're in. We wait for a period of time, and we can do a range of different things. Maybe we use a shared filter at this particular point. We could repeat the process. We could simply copy this one. We could drop that in like so. And so again, we ask the question, are they in the mining industry? And if they are in the mining industry at this point, we could take them up like so. And because I'm just a little bit fussy, I'd probably drop that down there like that. However, if they're still not in the mining industry, we may then ask the question, are they in any of our top 5 industries? And that's where a shared filter comes in handy. So here I can ask a single question pretty much. Whereas with the shared filter, I could actually drop in my top 5 target industries that we want to talk to. And so if they are in that space, well, great, that's fine. We can then take them off down a slightly different track. And again, you can continue on this canvas or maybe move them to a different canvas, which focuses on that range of industries. Now, what do we do with people that at this point, we still don't have confirmation of their industry? It may not be that it may still be that the field is in fact blank. We don't know their industry. Perhaps you could send them off to a program where we push them back into the CRM. Depending on your CRM, you could have the Eloqua program actually create a task within that particular CRM platform. So whether it's like a service request or a case management type of scenario, or a task for a particular owner, for example, there are a range of different ways that the integration could work for you. So it would be clear from here maybe that email is just not working. It's just not getting the answers that we need in order to provide more information to a person. So maybe let's send them back to the CRM. Let's get the outbound call center to make some phone calls, see if we can catch that information, and then potentially return them to a campaign like this at some later point. Exclusions, this one's kind of easy, basically. It's really, you saw in that whole process as we went through, there were basically yes, no, sort of a tick or a cross type of scenario. And the exclusion can be for a range of different reasons. Somebody may share a piece of information with you from a profile point of view, and whatever their response is, it may be abundantly clear that this particular campaign you've got them routed through is just not the right one. Okay, so we can push them off into a wait step where they will then exit the campaign, for example. There could be a whole range of different reasons, but another one can also be through lack of engagement. If we look at a nurture campaign, a standard lead nurture campaign, maybe it's 10 emails, and those 10 emails might be delivered over, it could be a 6-month period, right? If you're sort of halfway through that campaign, 5 emails have been sent, what you could do is use a shared filter to determine if the person has in fact opened any of those past 5 emails. And now if there are sort of 5 emails into the campaign, there's another 5 to go, and at this point they haven't opened anything, you gotta kind of wonder, is that maybe a good time to remove them from the campaign? Is there really any benefit in pushing additional emails out the door to an individual that hasn't opened anything. Email clearly isn't quite getting there. So maybe something like an outbound call is a good idea, or maybe routing them off to what you might call a re-engagement campaign, which is where you try and grab their attention with some sort of fun, slick type of subject line to get them engaged again, and just really say, hey, is what we're sharing of interest? Is this helpful? Would you like to hear more? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Click here to sort of get back into the campaign if you'd like, etc., or give us a call. Here's our phone number. Happy to chat with you if you'd rather do something like that. So that lack of engagement is something to be mindful of. We shouldn't just assume that everybody going to the campaign is going to be hyper excited about what we're doing. And these typically, I give you this advice typically in the context of a more high value type of purchase. Okay, so I'm not talking about $89 airfares from New York to Miami. Not talking about shoes and handbags and jeans and shoes and et cetera, talking more about higher value, a considered purchase that a person is going through. We don't necessarily see much benefit in pushing things onto people if it's not working. If the message isn't resonating, we need to change things up a little bit. And sometimes that re-engagement type of campaign can be something to consider to grab people's attention and to make sure that what you're delivering is of value to those particular people. Okay. So the exclusions, as I said, if we just go back here, so one of the key areas for exclusions is looking at getting information back into the CRM. So just to revisit, depending on how your instance of Eloqua is in fact integrated, it's probably integrated using a program. Not the program builder, it may well be, but hopefully you've upgraded that now to a program canvas. And that's just much faster is the primary thing, and gives you a bit more flexibility as well. That can be a really good way to get information back into the CRM and create a task or a case or a service request, however your CRM manages those sorts of things, and get people to pick up the phone and make an outbound call. Can be another way to do it. If you simply want somebody to exit from the campaign, you could do, let's give an example. So let's get rid of that. So for instance, if the answer is no, you could use a wait step to be your exit point. Like so. What I tend to do if it is in fact an exit, I'll just say exit as the step name. You can wait for a day or an hour, it doesn't really matter. But that then becomes your exit point for the campaign. So imagine if there's 5 emails before this, etc. We could use the shared filter to ask if anyone's opened all or any of those 5. If they've not opened any of them, then maybe it's time for them to drop out of that particular campaign. And that can be interesting if you actually name these a little bit better. So exit sort of after 5 non-email opens, something like that. If you're a little bit more specific, that then becomes quite helpful, and you can see that in your exit reports that you can see over here. And you can export that as well, and you just do a little bit of analysis to see where people are in fact dropping out of the campaign, which can be helpful for you to do some analysis in addition to the insight reports that you can access as well. Just quickly before we wrap up, the Release 23A arrived in February. A number of key highlights here. You'll notice the QR code there on the screen. If you wanted to subscribe to that, we do an important update email with each release. So there are 4 releases of the year. So there are a minimum of 4 emails that will be sent to you each year. So clearly it's not going to bombard your inbox, but feel free to subscribe to that. You can just scan that QR code and you'll find that information. One of the nice things with 23A was the ability to make your insight reports a little bit more on brand. So adding of your logo, your corporate colors, your color palette, etc., being able to add to that. So that's kind of cool. The email frequency by email group. Now, email frequency report is something in Insight you've been able to do for a long time, but it groups all email groups at the same time. Now, as I'm sure is the case in your organization like mine, different email groups are in fact delivered very differently. So like the email group we have for important updates, this 1 email a quarter. Okay, so the email frequency is going to be very minimal. However, with a user group, depending on if people are registering every month, they could receive up to, well, an invitation, then a confirmation email if they register after that first one. They get one, two, so it could be 4 emails a month that would go out with the user group, for example. So this one, the new report, enables you to do email frequency by email group. So it's a much better way to analyze that particular data. Have a look at that one. If frequency of email is something you're concerned about, I generally find most people are a little bit relieved when they look at that. It's not nearly as heavy as they think it is. So that's good news. The automated certificate management, if you're an administrator with Eloqua, this is looking at SSL certificates and all those sorts of fun things. So automated certificate management is being eventually rolled out to all pods, and pod 1 and 2, I think, will be amongst the last to go live. So 3 and 4 are happening right now. Pods 5, there's either, there is no pod 5, I think it's 6 and 7 going through this process. But essentially by the end of the year, you'll be able to manage all of your SSL certificates, which are critical for deliverability and all those other fun things, especially for landing pages. That'll be done by the end of this year. If you're running the Oracle Eloqua SMS product, then increased ability around folder management and segment filter updates is also now available. Hopefully you're seeing that. Pods 3 and 4 are also moving to the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI, as it's called. Good information to know. Is it overly exciting? Well, you look, it kind of is, but it's more background technology. It's just newer, beautiful, faster, bigger servers from Oracle that Eloqua was sitting on, which is cool. And we'll see lots more functionality that we'll see, I think, over the coming years as a result of the move to these new data centers as well. So that's good news. And Oracle Cloud accounts, again, if you're an Eloqua administrator, this one's important. Again, if you do subscribe to the important update, you'll receive additional information. Please also have a look at some of the product notices in top liners. If you just look at Oracle Cloud accounts, you'll see the information there as well. Now, if you're a Salesforce CRM customer integrated with Eloqua, continues to be loads of Salesforce app enhancements. And again, we'll be looking to get some more information out to our Eloqua/Salesforce CRM customers with a few more specifics in there to have a look at as well. So thank you very much. That just about wraps us up for this morning. So thanks for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We appreciate you making some time to be with us. Next month will be all about lead scoring. So what we want to do next month is take a look at what we've looked at in February and March around the engagement and driving those different experiences, and then looking at how we can capitalize on that and use lead scoring to help us identify and bring to the surface those more highly qualified leads. So we look forward to seeing you online next month to discuss lead scoring and how that can help us drive people in different campaigns and journeys, etc., that we're building. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful week. Thank you very much.